Hi everyone, happy Monday. Welcome to another Real Reflective Practice with me, your host, Dr. Anjali Pereira. I hope you've all had a good week. Say hello to me in the chat as well if you guys are here. I'm in a different place today, as you can see, not in the shed anymore. I'm trying out the spare room because I just managed to get an Ethernet cable in here. So the only downside of that is it's right next to my daughter's room. So if you hear any squawking of a toddler, as the show goes on, I can only apologize. But yeah, let's try it out. Lockdown life, right? Yes, so if you guys are watching from YouTube, then please sign into your account to join the chat and please comment as we go along. But if you're joining from Facebook, then you'll be able to join the chat automatically and interact with me and my guests. So yeah, comment away. Oh, hi, Hannah, welcome. So as you know, for the last couple of weeks, I have been reading out reflections sent in by you guys to me about the shows, just about general thoughts that you have. So I'd like to read out a reflection that was sent to me by Freedom at Last, who wanted to comment on the show a couple of weeks, last week rather, that I did with Hannah Kaji. Hi, Mutant Barbie. Oh, I love your name. That's kind of scary, but kind of cool. Yes, so Freedom at Last wanted to comment on the show about boundaries that I did with Hannah Kaji last week. And they say, hi, Anjali. I caught up with the last broadcast yesterday, and I have to say, I thought it was really powerful. Boundaries is a topic I've never actively thought about or reflected on, but like you and Hannah, issues with boundaries have affected many aspects of my life and continue to do so. I also find it difficult to say no to people. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how that willingness to please, if you will, always ends up backfiring in some way. For me personally, I think my energy gets so drained when I give so much to other people that at times I become very irritable and short with those closest to me, as I have no more pleasing energy to give. And those people who are closest to me are just most deserving of my kindness and patience, but that energy is almost wasted on pleasing co-workers or managers or random people in the street. Anyway, I'm so grateful that I'm finally beginning to recognize this within myself, as awareness is always the first step towards change. So thank you both for allowing me to get there. Thanks for another wonderful broadcast. Looking forward to the next one. Best wishes, Freedom at Last. Oh, well, Freedom at Last, thank you so much for that lovely message. I'm so grateful that you sent that in. And, you know, I think you make a really pithy point, actually, about the fact that you need to prioritize your mental energy, right? I mean, people pleasing is exhausting. And there's some irony there, really, you know, that we're trying to appease all these different kinds of people in our lives. And that drains us so much that we have nothing to give to the people who really matter to us. I've definitely done that a lot. I've been guilty of that. And there's an element there of, you know, taking those close relationships for granted, you know, that, oh, they're my brother, oh, they're my best friend. They'll forgive me, you know, for not being there for them. And maybe perhaps that's because often the relationships that we feel most secure in are the relationships that are the greatest risk of neglect. When in reality, you know, those are the relationships that we really need to invest the most in. So I'm really glad that you're taking steps to overcome that. And thank you again for reaching out to me. And if any of you guys would like to send me a reflection, then please do. Email them to me at dranjalipereira@gmail.com, and I will read them out live on air. Pick yourself a pseudonym like Freedom at Last if you would like to. And yes, I can't wait to hear from you. So let's move on to today's theme, which is creativity. My story tonight is about an oncology seminar that I had with one of my educational supervisors in med school. I think it would have been during preclinical years. She was teaching our group about leukemia. And for this particular session, she asked us all to be creative and prepare our own teaching material to share with the group. And she didn't give us a specific type of leukemia, and she didn't specify whether she wanted us to talk about, you know, the symptoms or diagnosis or treatment. She just gave us a very open brief and let us do whatever we wanted. Now, most of the rest of my group did, you know, the classic presentation, because as we all know, when it comes to medical teaching, PowerPoint is a doctor's weapon of choice. I think one person did a case study, which was a bit more of an interesting way of teaching. It was like storytelling almost. And then my turn came. And at this point, I felt like a right idiot, because not only had I not prepared a PowerPoint presentation, I had written a song. And I'd taken, you know, that famous tune, Hallelujah. I'd taken that and I'd warped the lyrics to be about leukemia. Now, I won't sing it to you tonight. I won't subject you to that. But I will post the lyrics in the show notes if you would like me to. It's apologies as well if it's a bit out of date in terms of medical accuracy, but this was way back in 2008, 2009. So I'm sure oncology has moved on a lot since then. But yes, as embarrassing as it is, I will read you the first verse. These patients turn up really sick because this disease can kill you quick. They're breathless and they sometimes have anemia. Their lymph nodes often can get huge. They turn up pale and hot and bruised. Their marrow fails and gives them neutropenia. Acute leukemia, acute leukemia. Okay, you get the idea. Anyway, feeling incredibly nervous, I proceeded to hand out the lyric sheets to my group. I pressed play on the track that I'd brought with me, and we sang this silly leukemia song. And it was fun. I think the group enjoyed it, and my supervisor even joined in. And at the end, I looked at her and I wondered whether she would tell me that was funny, that was fun, but stop being ridiculous and do a proper assignment. But what she actually said to me was something along the lines of, that was great. That was brilliant, a really creative way of teaching. You will now remember this for your exams and probably a lot longer. And she was absolutely right. I mean, I still, even 5 years after leaving medicine and, you know, over 10 years after writing that song, I still remember the lyrics from that song. I still remember that hypogammaglobulinemia may cause recurrent sepsis in chronic lymphoid leukemia. I mean, that is now completely useless information to me, but I still have it there. And what my supervisor said to me after that seminar stuck with me really for the rest of my clinical life and even my life since then. She said to me, Anjali, you are wasted in medicine. And what she meant by that was that this creativity, this talent, this interest that I had would better serve the arts world. I think she knew that medicine would, you know, crush this part of me and that it would never really be used. And I felt so torn about this because she was right. Medicine does crush your creativity. It takes young individuals with a variety of creative passions and a lot of skill and completely flattens that. It slowly squeezes away your time and your energy, and you can't do those things anymore. And eventually you forget that they were ever even part of who you were, or that they ever even mattered. But most heartbreakingly for me was that it shouldn't be that way. If giving one young medical student the space to be creative for one seminar helped an entire group to learn about blood cancer, then can you imagine what it would be like if all healthcare professionals were given the space and given the permission to bring their creativity to work? Can you imagine what it would be like to work for an NHS that celebrates imaginative enterprise rather than destroying it? It makes me question, what has our profession come to when we hear our seniors tell us that creativity is wasted in medicine? So to talk about that with me tonight, I am joined by a very special guest, Dr. Michael Samy. Mike is an ex-doctor like me, and he left medicine to explore the business world, and he fell in love with coding, and now he is a software developer. I've known Mike for a long time now, and he is one of the most passionate people I know, so I'm really, really excited to welcome him onto the show tonight. Thank you guys for the comments on the song lyrics. I really appreciate it. I will post the lyrics in the chat, in the show notes a little bit later. But for now, I'd like to welcome Dr. Michael Samy onto the show. Hi, Mike.
Hi.
How are you
How's
doing?
it going?
You all right?
Very good. Yeah.
Good. Sorry?
I said hello, everyone.
Oh, good. Mike, thank you so much for coming on to talk to me tonight about this theme of creativity. I'd love to just start by touching on what creativity is, because I feel like for a lot of medics, the word creativity conjures up very specific ideas. We think of art, we think of drama or music, perhaps creative writing, all the kind of artsy-fartsy stuff, really. And I think we tend to think of creative pursuits as hobbies, rather than seeing creativity really as a serious concept that matters and that is relevant, in a real sense in the workplace. And I know this is something that you've given a lot of thought to. So how do you think of creativity, and what does it really mean to you?
So I think creativity is, well, I mean, it's an interest, and it's something that you just really enjoy doing. You can spend hours, doing that thing. You're taking all your all your passion, all your drive, all the things that you enjoy, and you're doing something productive with it. And I think it's got a very, very loose meaning. Creativity can be applied in so many ways, but it's essentially you're doing something productive from your from your ideas, from your original thought. And I think the key point of it is the ability to create something new. Mm-hmm. It's a very difficult concept to really sum up. But I think probably the central point is the original thought, the thinking outside the box, the coming up with a new idea and creating something tangible from that new idea. And it's something that I have always felt, I love looking at a problem from a new perspective, thinking about taking things from first principles, not taking already baked ideas and just doing more of the same, but trying to break the whole thing down and say, well, why can't we do it this way instead? And that's something that I've personally done sort of all my life. Like I've always enjoyed the novel, and I've loved technology, because technology is taking magic and or magical thought, science fiction stuff that's really in the realm of of magical fantasy, and making real working things out of it. And all around the world, there are products. You pull your phone out of your pocket, and the device has a screen on it and can connect you to the whole world. And that was yesterday's magic. But science and create a whole series of creative people making little incremental marks on the world, ended up creating this phone as a sort of collective thing, with learnings passed through generations until you end up with this amazing technology. And you look at all the people who are involved in every technology, and it's you will find huge numbers of people, both recognized and unrecognized, who have thought outside the box, challenged the norm, and created things. So this is what gives me so much passion about creativity in general, is all the sort of new learning that you can gain from it, and the amazing things you can incrementally create through just thinking about things in a different way.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's sad really that people think of themselves as not creative because they're not arty. I mean, I remember reading about the Adobe survey that they did in 2012 about creativity, and something like 75% of the adults that they surveyed didn't think that they were creative at all, which is really sad to me,
Mm.
because, you know, when you're a kid, you have that childlike wonder, you know, you're constantly imagining things, creating things, you know, inventing games and using your imagination and really figuring things out. And yet something happens to us, you know, at some point in our teenage years, where we stop thinking of ourselves as fundamentally creative beings. And I think this has a lot to do with the limited perception that we have of creativity. And I think I was the same, you know, until I left medicine. I don't know if I really considered the broader meaning of the word creativity. I don't think I really made that link between creativity and innovation that you were talking about, you know, in the business world, for example, and creativity and problem solving as well. But inherently, as you say, you know, for new things to happen, be it a piece of art or a piece of software, you are producing things that haven't yet been produced, right? And you are thinking about things in a different way. And in essence, that is creativity, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I think it is interesting that when you say that the majority, you know, a huge number of people don't see themselves as creative. I've heard lots of people personally have told me that they're not creative, and you know, they've never been creative, and they'd love to have a creative career or to do creative things, but they're not creative. And I think, yeah, I honestly, I'm very skeptical by that sort of summary, and I think it's. I think everyone is creative, yes, and it's how they define creativity that's the problem, really. I think everyone is capable of thinking originally, and it's what makes us human. And we're all, you know, humans are capable of producing absolutely amazing things. I think the way that we have structured society and how we've you know, where we put our values has very much sort of meant humans collectively have sort of broken the idea of creativity. So they separate things. Humans are really good at pigeonholing people, putting people in boxes, telling people you are this, you can never be more than this. If you tell someone you're a doctor and a PR consultant or something, they will, not the public relations consultant, they will you know, people will look at you like, well, you know, you're not made to do that other thing. You're a doctor. And it's really strange. When I was in sixth form, or when I was coming up to sixth form, they wanted me to put down my choices for what I wanted to do for my A levels, and I was really, really good at DT, and I was really good at IT, and I loved the creative bits of DT and building things. I made the desk lamp once, and I loved sort of working with wood and working with plastics and, you know, building something from these sheet materials. And I did really, really well in these subjects. Like IT and DT were subjects I really excelled in. And so I still wanted to be a doctor. I applied for my A levels, put down IT, DT, you know, what it was, chemistry and biology or something like that. And they said, oh, sorry, actually the timetables conflict between DT and the subjects that people want to do to go into medicine. So I feel like the pigeonholing sort of starts young in a lot of places. And a lot of the way that we prepare people to go to medical school, for example, is by setting up systems and structures that say, how do we achieve this aim, this goal of going to medical school? It's not about, you know, it's not about sort of nurturing people's talents and skills. And you'd think it would be, to encourage people's natural aptitudes, their natural, you know, the natural things they're passionate about. But it's like, well, okay, you're going to choose a career, a completely abstract thing, really, at that age. You don't know what a career in medicine actually is, apart from what you see on ER or Scrubs. And they go, well, okay, to achieve this goal, you need to tick this, this, and this box. And I think that sort of behavior, this sort of box ticking, pigeonholing behavior that starts when you're young, eventually creates a society that's extremely box ticky, extremely sort of kind of platform step orientated, where you have to assume a role. You can't be a jack of all trades. You can't be someone who's both creative and a doctor. I think that idea, even throughout medical school, I was always chasing creative things. I did summer jobs with crazy sort of fashion designers, doing graphic design for events and things like that, and I absolutely loved those sorts of things. And as I learned more about myself, and I think this is the whole thing. Like, life is a process of learning, and you really have to be open to that learning. As I learned more about myself, I thought, well, actually, I'm someone who really finds myself sort of in my element when I'm doing creative things, when I'm drawing. I think personally, I'm very. You're someone who blogs a lot, and I read your blog when I was a disillusioned medic myself. And you enjoy your writing. I'm someone who's very visual. I really enjoy 3D modeling and drawing and things like that. And as I learned those things about myself, I sort of started to wonder whether there's more that life could offer me, and more things that I could do. And there's a whole world out there. And I was thinking, well, the world's my oyster. I really want to try other things out. So I tried a few careers out before I settled on software development.
No, I mean, it is incredible. You've had a really varied career. You've done lots of different things, and you've explored lots of different things. And for me, there's sort of an element of curiosity there, right? I think, I don't know if you've heard of Elizabeth Gilbert, but she's a writer, and in one of her books, she says we should try to replace the word creativity with curiosity. And that is such an interesting idea for me, because for me, it's only when we're in a really curious headspace, and it sounds like that's the kind of headspace that you tend to be in now, and perhaps you have been all your life. But when you're there, I wonder, that's when you think, I wonder whether we can do things in different ways. I wonder what else I can learn, that the idea of asking questions. That questioning phase is so important, right, in problem solving, really. And in fact, my friend Chris Hafner, who was on the show a couple of weeks back, he always says solving problems is easy, but knowing which problems to solve is brilliant. And I love that, because you cannot know which problems to solve. You don't know where to start unless you start looking at the world creatively, right?
Yeah. And creativity and curiosity definitely go hand in hand. It's a very obvious link for me. Maybe it's not so obvious to everyone. Maybe it's that I've explored creativity a lot. I've got I'm naturally someone who absolutely loves learning new skills and new things, and I've always just actively chased opportunities to learn new things. So I've done quite a few things. I'd see, even sort of, when I did a stint in public relations, and part of it was just I was absolutely curious about this world of the media, and how stories are pitched and how news is made and how all the business processes in between. And I think that's the thing that's always sort of motivated me, and I think that's creativity in itself. Saying, well, I'm going to do an experiment with my own life, and that experiment's going to be to try out a few things. And I've done a marketing job, and eventually ended up in software development, because actually I dabbled in code for years before that, but never actually felt like an expert. So about a year ago, I sort of put my foot down and said, well, I'm going to get really old without mastering this amazing world of programming, which has taken over every industry you can imagine. Medicine is being slowly taken over by technology, and revolutionized, but it's been a bit slow to start. We're seeing really positive signs, and it's you know, I mean, I think that's one area. Even when I was like a teenager, I was programming, building websites and things like that, and I absolutely loved it. I was absolutely in my element while I was doing it, and I thought it would be a shame if I don't really explore this area. And so I applied for a job with far too little experience, because I'd only ever dabbled in code, but just went for those jobs anyway. And perhaps to add to curiosity, you know, creativity also involves the word confidence. Because if you're not confident, you will never sort of dive in and try things out. It's very easy to get stuck in your comfort zone, get stuck in the things you know, and constantly go through a cycle of just constantly revisiting the things you already know and never venturing out to learn new things and new skills. You absolutely need the confidence to start things, try things out. To, you know, one thing I've been renovating my house, and we're almost finished with it, and I plumbed the kitchen myself, and I'd never plumbed a day in my life. But you go on YouTube, watch a few videos. I spent hours watching videos on YouTube about how to plumb, and I bought all the tools and equipment, things I needed, at a fraction of the cost it would have cost to hire a plumber, and plumbed my kitchen myself.
Wow.
And that just, you know, and it wasn't something that lots of people came up to me and said, "Oh, well, how can you plumb? You're not a plumber." And it's, again, pigeonholing. I'm not a plumber, but I'm curious, I'm confident, and you know, putting those two things together, you can go out and you can learn anything on the internet that you need to learn. There's no skill that's off limits. You go and you learn how to plumb a kitchen. You go and you just have a go at it, and it's and having the confidence to have a go teaches you so many skills, which then have an effect of sort of building on top of each other. And you know, you can apply skills you've learned in one area to so many other areas. You know, it's you know, you're plumbing around a really complex series of bends that are in the wall, and trying to solve problems to get the pipe to fit. And that teaches you various geospatial skills that you can then use in your CAD modeling, you know, and so then you can you get better at your CAD modeling. And you know, think that solutions in everything teach you a little bit, that teaches you to solve problems in a completely unimaginable sort of area. And I think that's the most exciting thing about learning through experience, is you know, I mean, I'm rambling a little bit, so just tell me.
No, it's really interesting. I can't believe you plumbed your own kitchen. That's amazing.
You have like loads of videos on YouTube of redneck engineers. And so, like, you know, and these are people who live on farms in America, and they just build helicopters and things like that. And these people are not, you know, they haven't been to university, they haven't got a degree, but they have tinkered with engineering, and they've learned so many things just through solving, you know, fixing a tractor, just through, you know, doing all these things, building houses and things. But eventually they go, well, okay, I'm going to make a, yeah, I mean, Google it, look it up on YouTube. You can see some, you know, these redneck engineers building helicopters and making rockets and all this sort of thing. And that's, you know, that's experiential learning. It's so exciting. And there's, you know, the sky is the absolute limit. And if you look closely enough, you will find that these people who are supposedly uneducated have had the creativity, the curiosity, the confidence to go and actually have a go at something, and they achieve amazing things through just going for it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love what you say about confidence being a part of creativity. That's not something that I really have thought about, but I think that is really true. And Hannah is saying in the comments here, I agree there, Mike. If you don't have the right support environment and practice thinking, I think it can be really difficult to cultivate inner creativity, even if you're a descendant of Mozart. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, it makes me think about all the talent that is in medicine, that is in doctors. You know, you get a really talented pool of people. Even to get into medical school, you have to do all these like extracurricular activities and win all these extra points or whatever for your UCAS, and then you get to medical school and it's completely crushed. So even if it's there, without that supportive environment that gives you that confidence, you know, to be creative, you're not necessarily going to feel you can be creative, really.
I mean, where you say, I don't really think it. I suppose it's different experiences in different medical schools, but I went to Barts, and at Barts there were so many clubs and societies, and there were, you know, there were. I was part of loads, like rowing and drama, and we had a cycling club and, you know, various other ones. The clubs and societies were incredibly creative places, and people. I met loads. I was the editor of a magazine as well there, and our graphic designer on our team was just so ridiculously creative. And she was doing like amazingly professional layouts and branding for this magazine. And, you know, I mean, these are all medical students. I think, to be honest, there's a wealth of creativity among medical students, and even the ability for them to not have any expertise in an area and then run a club or society in all sorts of inventive ways and come up with activities for people to do. And you know, in the drama society, we put on absolutely amazing productions, and it was, you know, and they were, you know, we used to pack out the hall with like 500 people, and, you know, it was a real, you know, really great creative activity. I think for me personally, I mean, I spent 5 years as a doctor, and I think that's where the creativity where I felt really frustrated that the creativity in me was just not being utilized. I was just too tired outside of work to ever do anything creative. Apart from the odd, you know, I used to do some like CAD modeling, design bikes and things like that, and sort of, you know, fantasize about building these bikes.
You'll have to explain what CAD modelling is to me, Mike. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Is designing 3D models on the computer. So the really cool thing is you can model, you know, as your skills get better, you can model and, you know, design any 3D shape you can think of, or any 3D assembly. And I use the engineering CAD software, so, you know, I modeled like a new type of bicycle that you know, folding bike that I wanted to make and ride. And, you know, every screw and every little part within this I individually modeled, and it was almost like a sort of meditative activity where I just go into my zone whenever I had any free time, and I'd sort of design this bicycle and all the working parts, and then you can put them together digitally, and, you know, and you can have a working bike in digital form. And that was really a great learning experience. But it was, again, I always felt frustrated because I wanted to do more of this, and I sort of, you know, I spent like maybe 1 or 2 hours a week on this project, and I just always felt like I really want more from life. I really want to be exercising this, creating something from nothing more, rather than, you know, I mean, me personally, I really didn't enjoy sort of, you know, going into work and doing. Yeah, I enjoyed some aspects of interacting with patients and making a difference in people's lives. I absolutely loved those parts of my job, but it always just felt like everything was out of my hands, and, you know, I didn't have enough control over what I did day to day, and it just felt like it was a mad rush every day to kind of just get through a quota of, you know, everyone who's coming through that door with very little support, and just feeling like you're tearing your hair out all the time. And I just really thought, well, you know, why isn't there a pathway for doctors who want to be more creative, who maybe want to work on sort of trying to innovate in service design, or, you know, because there were so many doctors who I met who had so many bright ideas about how they could run the hospital more efficiently, types of software that they could introduce, different ways of doing things. These were the people who were really like sort of, in some cases running the ward round every single day. They were the most, even though they weren't the consultant of the team, they were a junior doctor, they were still on top of absolutely every aspect of how the frontline patient care went, how the ward round was run and organized, how the clinics were. So it's, they had their own clinics and things. And I always thought, well, why is it that because they're pigeonholed as doctors, why can't they go out and try to innovate the service? And I think the answer really was because other people have come in and said, well, you can go and join the clinical entrepreneur program, and you can. It's a fantastic program, but you have to do that in your free time. You have to do that when you've got the energy, etc. Some people do, I admit. For me personally, my personal experience was I was absolutely exhausted after my shifts. I felt like mentally drained, and I didn't feel like I could sort of, finish my shift at sort of, get home at 7 or 8 o'clock at night or later and sit down and start a business or, start innovating. It wasn't something that was realistic in my life. And I think maybe there are sort of odd sort of savants of doctors who can go and cope with that. But I wasn't very happy with trying to sort of balance or entertain that sort of idea. I always wondered why it is that we don't have a pathway within medicine where doctors who feel that they want to make a difference and want to be creative could be in a paid role where they really contribute their unique experience to service design and development without and they might be people who naturally just aren't who find it very stressful running the clinical side of things, and then you wouldn't have doctors sort of just quitting medicine altogether and doing jobs, doing completely unrelated jobs. I do feel like huge, there are 16,000 members on the Facebook group Alternative Careers for Medics. That's 16,000 doctors who might be considering alternative careers or might be unhappy. I think really the NHS has to take a bit of a sign from this, or Health Education England, take a sign from the 16,000 doctors who seem, disgruntled, possibly, and think about ways that you could actually retain those people. I don't think it's through extracurricular courses and things. I think it's through actually making these people feel valued for their creativity by creating a and
to pay them for their creativity. That is something I feel so passionately about, is doctors being asked to do these things in their free time, as if it devalues the skill. If you're not paying someone for a skill, then effectively you are saying to them, we do not value that time. And it really grates on me. And I'd like to pick up on a point that you made earlier about being exhausted. That is something I hear a lot from the ex-doctor community and from the people that I coach. It's that exhaustion stifles their ability to think creatively. And I certainly felt this, when I moved out of medicine, once I was out of that highly pressurized environment, I had some room to breathe, and my creativity absolutely exploded. And not only that, I was actively being encouraged by my new colleagues and my new bosses, being paid to think creatively, and that made such a difference. And I think that's where I really began to think about how creativity needs that cognitive space, right? There's something about being in full-on survival mode when you're a doctor, and just trying to firefight, just trying to focus on getting things done, getting through. That doesn't allow you to be creative. It's not conducive to creativity, because you're not thinking in that higher space, really.
Yeah, there's and I think you mentioned you were going to touch on this, the idea of having a I think I'm convinced that some people have well, I think it's all on a scale. I don't think anyone should ever feel discouraged and feel that they're not I think them to be creative and curious and to innovate. But I always feel like got the feeling that there are different personalities. There are people who are very, very good at being very organized and doing lots of tasks and having meetings and doing that sort of multitasking, task switching, getting everything together, keeping an agenda, making sure everything's being ticked off, making sure pushing everyone else forward to make sure things happen. Then you've got people who actually who are quite often the personality type is quite disorganized, a bit of an absent-minded person, at times can sort of phase out and be in their own sort of daydreaming world, and people might say, oh, are you sleepwalking, are you awake? It's I get that a lot, like so I phase out and people are talking to me, I can't hear them, and I'm in my own sort of zone.
Is this the manager versus maker?
Yeah. The manager versus maker mindset, and everyone's got both bits of both, but I think some people are heavily on one side or the other in some cases, and I think the creative people often have, and programmers are definitely creative people, very solidly creative people. Programmers often talk about how they absolutely hate meetings because they disrupt the day so much. So, we have in my company, we have a 9:15 meeting. It lasts 10 minutes at most. And everyone just briefly says, right, I'm working on this and I'm doing this today. And I got this done yesterday. And then it's the end of the call. And the entire rest of the day, there's an unwritten rule where no one gets disturbed unless it's absolutely urgent. And so we all work on our own projects. And my first thing I do is I close my door. I sit at my desk. I'll have a moment to sort of get into the zone. I'll sometimes surf the web a little bit or whatever it is, read something, and then I will settle into the project that I'm doing. And it's a state. It's a little bit like falling asleep. You almost need a hygiene for it. You get into the routine slowly, and then you'll find that you fall into the flow state in a sort of fairly predictable way. And you get into your project, and you're just completely almost in a semi sort of trance of creativity, where you're programming, you're holding, in programming, you have to hold lots and lots of different, pathways and logical routes to create a desired sort of solution in your mind at once. And if someone comes in and goes, shouts, hey, you want to go for a walk, or whatever it is, will you do this for me, or do you want to have this meeting, or whatever it is, that breaks that train of thought. You forget everything that you was holding in your head. And it's a bit like when you're studying for your finals, for example. You're completely immersed within your subject matter, and if someone disturbs you, it takes a moment to snap out of that state of sort of intense thought. And I'm someone who's always been like that. I'm always someone who's always been sort of really absorbed in my work, and people try to distract me, and I ignore them because I'm not being rude, but I'm just completely buried within what I'm doing. And I've always been a maker.
That's the maker mindset.
Yeah, and that's the maker mindset, as far as I can describe my personal experience with it. But many other makers say the same sort of thing, that they can do one thing really, really well, but the moment they're distracted by something else, that train of thought is broken, and it can sometimes take some time to get back into that train of thought. The manager mindset is someone who will often split their day up into chunks of a certain length. They will have each hour they will be doing something different. They'll be mentoring someone one moment, they'll be having a meeting the next, and often on the extreme side, the main sort of purpose of their role is to just make sure everything is ticking along properly. And I think this is the mode that you're in as like a FY1 doctor. You're being bleeped every 5 minutes. You're writing things down on the list. you're going and seeing patients and just processing through really. I need to take bloods from this one. I need to do a cannula for this one. I then need to go to, oh, wait a minute, something's come up. We've got to go to resuscitate a patient. Or wait, there's someone who's bleeding on this ward. It's that sort of thing is just happening, and you're just in that complete sort of almost automatic mode where you have everything on your list, and it's quite easy because you're not really thinking deeply about each task. You're like, well, how do I prioritize this? I'll do this and this and this. And then I'm going to go and execute on those tasks. Those people are really, really good at actually refocusing the creatives, the maker mindsets. So I think the maker mindsets can be carried away, go off on huge tangents, and get sort of lost in what they're doing. The managers are definitely required. And this is me massively simplifying this. It's a lot more complex than this, but this is sort of a basic overview. Managers sort of every now and then, the sort of insightful manager will say, well, actually, this person is in the zone. I don't want to disturb them. And my boss, actually, my manager boss, who's got that main role of doing things like drumming up new business, bringing new clients in, organizing the meetings, making sure everyone's on task on the project and things like that. He will call me every few days, and say, right, where are we? How long how long have we got to do to go on this? What sort roughly, how long do you think realistically this is going to take? Though I know it might be a vague idea, and that's. Those people are absolutely essential, and without him, I might end up spending far too long on a project, or having sort of scope creep where I start to bring in lots of new features that I find exciting. I mean, he's also the guy who shoots down all the things which don't have business, which are not profitable for us as a business. If I'm like, wow, could you imagine if we added this amazing feature? It'd be so cool if we had like this auto sort on this list, where they just go on and it predicts that, they might need this, and that goes to the top. And he goes, well, has the client asked for that? And I would say no. And he would say, well, why are you coming up with that idea? It's all we also need to sort of make sure
rein in our creativity.
Yeah. So reining in is completely fine, and I think it can be seen as something that sort of squashes your creativity, but it's completely understandable. The decision to rein you in has been made with a completely logical basis. And it's not, and your creativity is respected in other times. And the way I feel valued in my current job, I've never ever felt valued to the same extent, within any medical job I had. And it sort of just gives me an indicator. I'm not going to bash medics who decide that medicine is for them. I never want to. I think medicine is right for a lot of people. For me personally, it's a very personal choice. If you go through 5 years being miserable the entire time, because you feel like you're not doing the things you really deep down you really want to do, then maybe it's time to start looking elsewhere for a career. But I think if you enjoy it, and on balance you're like, well, it's a great job. I don't want to put anyone off medicine who truly actually feels that they quite like the
No, absolutely. No, I think it's important to appreciate that we are all different. We all need different things and different levels of creativity in our jobs, perhaps. I'd like to just read some of the comments coming through. Got Mutant Barbie saying, it's true he learned plumbing off YouTube. Brilliant. Some confirmation for your story there, Mike. Chandler says, creativity is dragged from you in school in Sri Lanka for sure. It's like if it's not in a book or some professional hasn't spoken about it, it's not true, or the creative person is wrong and loony. Uni is no different either. And Mutant Barbie says, medical school took in a load of astonishingly creative young people, and an awful lot of that creativity didn't survive foundation training. Definitely, I lost my creativity for 5 years. And Laurel says, switching between manager and maker is exhausting. I know, It's really interesting to think about. I mean, Chandika's comment, I grew up with a Sri Lankan background, and it's really interesting for me to think about how the education system works there. There is very little space, as Chandika says, for creativity. You learn facts and figures. You're taught very much how to pass the exam and not to think laterally. And I feel like that is mirrored in medicine, a bit like some of what the other comments are saying. Medicine is such a vast area now. We have so much information about body systems, about drugs, about disease processes. There is an awful lot of rote learning. There is an awful lot of, as you say, just doing menial tasks and admin, really. It's managerial, a lot of what a junior doctor does. And so that space to be creative is just not there. You stick to the nice guidelines, or you do what your consultant tells you to do. And the rest of the time, if you're just doing paperwork, that part of the brain it doesn't really get used, does it?
No, it comes down to really, you like what you like at the end of the day. If you really can't let go of your creative, or if you can find something that works in terms of finding creative pursuits that work alongside your clinical medicine, then by all means. If you feel that the creative things you want to do are really sort of just something that puts you in your element, and you feel like you miss those constantly and you've completely lost them, which is what many of us feel. I think certainly you, Priyanjali, felt the same, that you wanted to write and you didn't, and you found that you were just completely, your reserve was completely dried up by your practice in medicine, and you're torn because you feel almost like a guilt trip where where you've got your patients to look after, you want to give them the best care that you can, but you're just so exhausted from being overworked. I think all doctors are in the UK at least, and in many other countries are it's a profession that's understaffed, and as a result you find yourself doing loads of unpaid overtime, and you're just exhausted. And I think there's a concept called decision fatigue that you can have, and you've spent a 12-hour shift making hundreds of decisions about your patients. You get back and all you want to do is sit down and watch Netflix, and eat something, and you just really kind of just don't have any energy. I remember just like months and months could go past where I wouldn't do any of my creative things, because I was just exhausted all the time. And then since I left medicine, I do find myself picking up, I've done huge numbers of creative activities just because I've got, I'm not making decisions. I'm not making life or death decisions every day. I'm not fatigued all the time. I can get into the maker mind, which does sometimes take, a couple of hours of ramp up time to actually get into that zone where you're really immersed in the activity that you're doing. I'm very lucky that my job is so creative. Oftentimes my boss will say, "How do you feel about getting onto this project?" They need they need a new front end designed. They need a new flow design for how you solve this business problem. So can you design a digital flow charting tool that then they can use to put in the numbers for an online mortgage or whatever it is? And it's a creative process. You start with a piece of paper and you're putting together a logical process. You're creating something from nothing, and then you show, and you're being paid, and then you show them, and you show the client, and you present. And I often have days where I have to present. I have to have a call with a client and present the work. I don't get much work done on those days, which is really interesting. So you have like a 2-hour meeting with a client, and it breaks the day up, and you just often don't get back into the flow state. You often need a whole day to really get good work done. But you present the work to the client, they're really pleased with the work, and they're congratulating you, and they're really, and that feedback is really valuable, especially when you really value creativity, and it's part of your identity, and it's part of you know, of who you are. When someone's saying, "Hey, great work on that," it's a really nice, satisfying, you know, thing to get. When previously, I mean, interestingly, I was just reading Chandika's comment about how, you know, creativity is dragged away from you in school. Yes, I think this is one of the things. I mean, the world, for some weird, I don't understand why. It's obviously like a mass human effect of the thinking of many humans or generations, or a traditional thing. The idea that you have to live your life in this really, you know, so it's a cliche almost, where you have like rebel teenagers being like, "I'm not going to live my life the way, you know, I don't. Well, we don't need no education." It's all that sort of thing. It's you know, young people are really creative, and as they get older, they get more sort of, I think maybe security focused, and society values and pays you for the type of jobs that, oh, traditionally, you know, the type of jobs that give you security and a lifelong income. And you know, the creativity part of life, you know, the starving artist is a well-known idea. You know, creativity is just not really valued.
Yeah, and there's an element there, sort of picking up on you being asked to do, you know, to jump in on some random new project, and you may not have done that before, but you know, creativity, it's that confidence piece again. It's diving in, it's trying out new things, it's not being perfect. And I do think there is an element of perfectionism in a lot of medics. Certainly, I am a recovering perfectionist. And creativity almost requires you to fail, right? There's a writer called Anne Lamott who said almost all good writing begins with terrible first drafts or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's so true. And I now realize that's true. And I let my first drafts be absolutely shit. And I use my second draft to make it look like I knew what I was doing all along. But for medics, I think this is a difficult concept for us to cope with, because we're taught that that's a bad thing, and we expect the very best from ourselves, really from the word go. And I think that does make that first part of creativity, that exploration, that, you know, trying new things, that does make that frightening, really, right?
Yes. So what was the last thing you said?
Well, I just think it makes it scary. It makes it scary to be creative when you're institutionalized in a way to think that you have to think in a certain way, that things have to be done perfectly, that you can't sort of have a bit of failure, have a bit of mistake making at the beginning, and then get to something great through that. When you're institutionalized into thinking that's a bad thing, I think that does limit our ability to be creative fundamentally.
Yeah, I think it's. I've got quite a few. I've actually got some good friends who actually do have very strong creative potential, who are in, you know, who are doctors in medicine, and they one friend in particular will say he's not creative, but yes, he's also someone who definitely recognizes that he is a perfectionist. And I mean, he came around to my house quite frequently, and you know, to help me with renovating my house. And he was very much like, I could never do this because I just get too frustrated. And I'm someone, I have a go. I don't do things perfectly. This is one of the things. I've renovated the kitchen, and it looks very nice, and I've even surprised myself. You know, I feel like I didn't really believe it was going to come out so well, but it's come out really nicely. I mean, I've made so many mistakes. You know, it's funny that whenever anyone achieves anything in life, you know, even big things, not just a house renovation, but you know, when people achieve things and they get recognition for them, they brush over all the mistakes and all the imperfection, and public figures and things, you know, celebrities, etc., people, or great engineers, or whatever it is, artists, they hide the part of their reality where they've actually had a disaster behind the scenes, and the frustration and the stress and that huge, so the what you actually see is the tip of the iceberg. The rest of the iceberg is all that sort of insecurity and apprehension and frustration. And I think it's illustrated quite well by one time Laurel, my wife, walked in and into the kitchen while I was working, and I was just red-faced, like shouting, kind of just going completely insane, while a pipe leaked on my head. And I sort of wrestled with pipes, and there was this clanging of pipes, and Laurel was looking at me like, and it was 1 a.m. because I'd spent all day on this one task. And oh, have I lost you?
No, I can still hear you. It's just we've lost your video.
Have I got you back? You blanked out just for a moment there.
Oh, Mike, I think I've lost you. Oh, Mike, can you hear me? There you are.
Wait for a moment for Priyanjali to come back.
Okay, have we got you back?
Hello. I think we've had some connection problems.
Yes. Mike, I've just realised that we have been speaking for an hour. I can't believe that, or almost an hour. So I think we should leave it there. But thank you so much for that incredible conversation and for joining me in this practice around creativity. If people want to reach out to you, how can they find you?
So you can email me, michael.samy@composedhealth.com. And yeah, no, it's been an absolute pleasure to be on the show today.
Brilliant. Thank you, Mike. Take care. Speak to you soon.
Take care. Thanks everyone for watching.
Bye. Oh, wow, that was really fun. I really enjoyed that conversation. I can't believe it went on so long. Apologies if I have messed up anyone's schedules. Maybe this is the second time I've run over, so maybe I should make these practices a bit longer, maybe an hour rather than 45 minutes. Let me know what you think. Would you like me to do it for an hour? If you would, or if you wouldn't, whatever you want me to do, just at me on Facebook or Twitter at Disillusioned and tell me really what you think. I'd love to know. Thank you again so much, guys, for coming tonight. I hope you enjoyed this practice as much as I did. Please like and subscribe and share this with friends and colleagues. And again, if you would like to send me your reflections on tonight's show or any other show, just email me at dranjalipereira@gmail.com. And I will read them out on future shows. I am back next Monday. I'll be talking to the incredible Dr. Sarah Golding about the theme of identity. So please join me then. Same time, same place. Take care, guys. Stay inspired, and I will see you next week. Bye.